Hello and thanks for joining us here on France 24 for France in Focus. I'm Tom Burgess-Watson. Coming up in the programme, courting foreign investors. The French President François Hollande unveils measures to show the world that France is open for business. And facing up to history, the National Assembly addresses the forced migration of hundreds of children from the French island of Réunion. And a European first, we take you to a vast exhibition on the edge of Paris dedicated entirely to the legendary film franchise Star Wars. First, with unemployment at a 16-year high and growth close to zero, the French President François Hollande has this week been on a charm offensive, trying to persuade foreign company leaders to open their checkbooks and invest in France. While addressing a gathering of company chiefs at the Élysée Palace, President Hollande promised to make France more attractive by simplifying the tax policies and reducing the bureaucracy. But according to a recent UN report, the French government has a tough job ahead of it. Foreign investment in France is currently at a 27-year low.
Rolling out the red carpet to woo skeptical investors back to France, French President François Hollande met some 30 top foreign executives to tell them his country does not fear foreign capital.
We're not afraid of shareholders coming to invest in France. We're not looking to protect ourselves.
Last year, France suffered a 77% drop in foreign direct investment, while neighboring Germany saw it quadruple. To curb the trend, Hollande has stepped up efforts to shed his anti-business reputation. New measures meant to make it easier to invest in France include visas obtainable in 48 hours, 4-year residency permits for university graduates and highly qualified workers, as well as financial aid for startups. Foreign executives have strongly criticized Hollande's flagship 75% tax on high earners, as well as a corporate tax rate expected to hit 38% this year, a European record.
Taxes are a problem, but there has been a major commitment today to re-look and to make the regime friendly.
Though he didn't dismiss the planned reforms, Hollande did promise more stability regarding France's fiscal policy.
Cette visibilité, elle est indispensable.
Visibility is crucial. How can you invest if you're not sure that taxes will stay the same throughout the life of your investment?
Among the companies that have made the move is Pavatex. The Swiss firm settled in eastern France last year, attracted by low energy prices, qualified labor, and extra funding. For its CEO, France's biggest problem isn't taxes or expensive labor, but its very complicated registration process. It took his company 2 years to start operating.
There's room for improvement. You could, for example, create a single office for foreign companies settling in France, which would allow them to deal with one person in charge of processing your file, with the different authorities involved.
20,000 foreign companies currently employ some 2 million people in France. To fight a stagnating economy and an unemployment rate at a 16-year high, the president is hoping to increase that number by 40% over the next 3 years.
Over a period of some 20 years, until as recently as the early 1980s, hundreds of enfants volés, or stolen children, were taken from the French island of Réunion and resettled in underpopulated areas of mainland France. But for the first time this week, lawmakers here at the National Assembly have been facing up to the state's role in this dark chapter of French modern history.
Marie-Thérèse Gasp chanced upon her own story 20 years ago when she was reading an article about the children taken from the island of La Réunion by force. She was one of those children. At the age of 3, Marie-Thérèse found herself living in central France with a couple whom she had never met before.
I would say I'm a stolen child, stolen and forgotten as well. What shocks me in this story is that a child can be taken from her parents and a whole part of my history was erased. That really shocks me.
In the early 1960s, the island of La Réunion is overpopulated. The newly elected MP, Michel Debré, has an idea: send children who are being looked after by social services to rural areas in France, whose population is shrinking. Over 12 years, he oversaw the exodus of more than 1,600 children to France, officially to study there. Marie-Thérèse has been trying to trace her mother for years. She finally found her. Her mother told her she didn't abandon her. She placed Marie-Thérèse in a shelter as a temporary measure.
When she came to collect me, they didn't give her any explanation, nothing. Your daughter's in France, full stop.
Did anyone have your mother sign papers authorising your departure?
My mother didn't sign any papers. She didn't know what happened to me.
As far as the state is concerned, she still has the name of her adoptive parents. But she prefers to be called Marie-Thérèse, as her mother baptized her. One way to begin to make amends.
He's the man behind ideas such as this, the Vélib bike-sharing scheme here in Paris. But in March, the city's mayor of 2 terms is going to step aside. Let's take a look back now at Mayor Delanoë's 12 years at City Hall.
They can seem never-ending. Traffic jams in Paris have gotten longer in the past 12 years. His critics say Bertrand Delanoë is waging a vendetta against cars. The outgoing mayor's urban policies seek to cut down the number of vehicles in the French capital with immediate consequences on traffic.
For the last 10 years, Paris City Hall has organised bottlenecks to try to discourage car drivers from coming to the city. On the one hand, they closed part of the expressway, but that's only recent. The biggest hindrance to drivers is that there's a third less parking space in Paris than before. You've got 20% of drivers going in circles looking for a parking space at any given moment.
Traffic got even worse starting June 2013. One of Bertrand Delanoë's biggest projects was to transform more than 2 kilometers of the expressway along the Seine River, converting a part of this vital artery in the heart of Paris into a space for walkers, joggers, and families. On this February morning, visitors, however, are few and far between. Since becoming mayor in 2002, Delanoë has made bus lanes a priority. He's also inaugurated the Autolib, a network of 3,000 electric cars, as well as the Vélib and its 1,249 docking stations in Paris proper. Alternative modes of transportation that have won over tens of thousands of users and been exported around the world.
I take Vélibs almost every day. They're incredibly useful. They're very well spaced around the city.
But today, close to 2/3 of Parisians are unhappy with traffic in their city, despite the financial effort. Paris's debt has more than tripled in 12 years. It stood at 1.3 billion in 2002, but reached almost 4 billion this year. The budget has also ballooned. Housing and transport get the biggest pieces of the pie.
The city spends a lot on operating costs, but also on large-scale investments. These investments provide a structure. They're very large. And at the same time, the city won't be able to continue funding these projects forever, or even launch them at such a frenzied pace.
Paris's biggest ongoing investment, the Halles redevelopment project. The aim is to adapt the site to the city's needs. With the canopé, the glass structure overlooking the building, the architects sought to blend the forum into the neighborhood with its garden, mall, and subway station. Building began in 2011 and should end in 2016 for a total price tag of 800 million euros.
What's really set to change is the surface area, because the new building with the canopé will allow for a greater number of businesses, and most of all, more cultural spaces. Les Halles is a bit like the heart of Paris from a transport perspective. The underground station at Châtelet-les-Halles is a central point for the transport system, which is why 800,000 people transit through every single day.
Promoting public transportation, creating new green spaces, developing the commercial sector, all with a large bill to show for it, Les Halles is an emblematic showcase for Delanoë's years in Paris' City Hall.
And we end at the Cité du Cinéma in the north of Paris, where an exhibition is well underway dedicated to Star Wars, one of the most successful film franchises in history. And here you can see on display spaceships, costumes, miniatures, taking you deep inside the universe created by George Lucas, which ever since the late 1970s has inspired the young and the not so young right across planet Earth.
Chewbacca, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, Princess Leia. These are the beloved characters from the Star Wars saga. And now 200 costumes and miniatures from the films are on display. Even Darth Vader gets a place of honor. Dressed up as their favorite characters, devoted fans pore over every detail.
The universe that George Lucas created is an infinite universe. All that mythology is something that will remain universal and timeless.
Since 1977, when the first film was released, Star Wars has become one of the most successful franchises of all times.
When we examine the construction of the characters, that's when we really understand that everyone can identify with the Star Wars universe.
Seeing the sketches for the film and some of the first scale models, it's easy to understand how George Lucas was able to create such a fully realized space epic.
Star Wars created real stir in 1977. It was almost like a documentary for us at the time. We had never seen special effects that were so realistic, so impressive for a 10-year-old kid.
I think that the objects on display, which come from George Lucas's personal collection, have become works of art in their own right.
Inspired in part by comic books, science fiction, and the great myths of antiquity, the characters of Star Wars tell the story of a grand movie drama.
Well, on that note, we leave you. Thanks for watching. Do stay tuned to France 24. May the Force be with you.